To wonder where we were before we were conceived is very similar to wondering what will happen after we die. How strange it is to know that at one point we woke up without ever having gone to sleep. It's the other side of the coin, of the fact that one day we will go to sleep and never wake up. Have you ever considered the possibility that we live in a simulation? Or that we're a brain in a jar on a countertop somewhere? How would you know? You know? Are you seeing what you're seeing when you look around? Are you actually seeing it, or are you seeing your brain's interpretation and presentation of what it believes it is seeing? These questions can be unnerving, but I think that they are very important to consider, especially in the context of self-improvement, the overall theme of this channel. What is self-improvement? How can we be sure that we are improving ourselves when it is in fact the unimproved self doing the improving? I say I know what you are because I know what I am. And what I am is, as Alan Watts put so elegantly, an aperture through which the entire universe is looking at itself. Our whole lives we are taught that we are a human being with a name, country, set of beliefs, and an identity. It seems that to challenge these notions would be insane, and I'm not exactly doing that, because obviously you are human with a name, a country, set of beliefs, and an identity. I just think that it's less true to say that you are just those things, and more true to say that you are the entire universe experiencing itself as a human with a name, a country, a set of beliefs, and an identity. I see it as like saying that you are just your finger, right? It's not untrue to say that your finger is you. It's just more true to say that you are your entire body. If you are thinking of yourself as cut off and separate from the entirety of the universe, then you are thinking of yourself as just the finger. In the Hindu religion, there is a concept known as the Maya, and it is the simulation theory, essentially, in that the world we find ourselves in is fundamentally illusory. And there's also the idea of a lower and a higher self, known as Atman and Brahman. Atman being myself and Brahman being the self. And there's a saying, Atman is Brahman, which is to say, I, the finger, am the whole of the universe, the body. Think about it. You don't have to focus on your heartbeat. You don't have to beat your own heart. You don't have to focus on breathing in order for that to continue. There's all this stuff that's going on inside you and outside of you that you don't have to control for it to continue going on. That is Brahman. Atman is the one that gets to enjoy it all. But ultimately, they are two sides of the same coin. It's a strange idea to consider that the limitations of our being do not stop at the skins of our bodies. This idea goes against the intuition of the left hemisphere of our brains, which sees the world analytically, dividing forms into categories and defining boundaries between them. The right hemisphere does not do this. It sees the world as a whole. And interestingly, when people have a stroke that affects only their left hemisphere, this is how they begin to perceive the world exclusively. They see it as no boundaries. They don't see any boundaries anymore. They see everything as flowing together and the relationship between all things as obvious. How can it be possible that these two hemispheres don't contradict each other? The idea on one hand that there are differences between all things, and on the other hand that those boundaries are fundamentally illusory. I would say that the left hemisphere is responsible for the tools and signs that are necessary for survival, but not necessarily an accurate representation of reality. In the same way that you cannot eat the word food, but it is a useful tool to point to the reality that is edible. I really like the idea that the entire universe that we see when we look out into the cosmos or down into the microscopic world exists within a black hole, and that the Big Bang that they estimate occurred some 26 billion years ago is actually the birth of the black hole that we exist within, and that universe is itself within another black hole, which itself is in another universe above it, and so on and so forth. I say that is what we are. We are infinity, experiencing itself as a human for a short while. I want you to just take a second and imagine this is real. Really consider it. Consider the possibility that you are in fact an aperture through which the entirety of the universe is looking at itself and experiencing itself. How does that make you feel to consider that? How does it make you feel to imagine that being reality? Let me know down in the comments. And to conclude this video, memento mori, or remember death. Imagine what it would be like, what it will be like, to go to sleep and never wake up. Is there actually anything to be afraid of?
Let's suppose that you were able every night to dream any dream you wanted to dream. And that you could, for example, have the power within one night to dream 75 years of time, or any length of time you wanted to have. And you would naturally, as you began on this adventure of dreams, you would fulfill all your wishes. You would have every kind of pleasure you could conceive. And after several nights of 75 years of total pleasure each, you would say, well, that was pretty great. But now let's have a surprise. Let's have a dream which isn't under control. Well, something is going to happen to me that I don't know what it's going to be. And you would dig that and come out of that and say, wow, that was a close shave, wasn't it? And then you would get more and more adventurous, and you would make further and further out gambles as to what you would dream. And finally, you would dream where you are now. You would dream the dream of living the life that you are actually living today. That would be within the infinite multiplicity of choices you would have, of playing that you weren't God. Because the whole nature of the Godhead, according to this idea, is to play that he's not. The first thing he says to himself is, man, get lost. Because he gives himself away. The nature of love is self-abandonment, not clinging to oneself. Throwing yourself out, as in, for example, in basketball, you're always getting rid of the ball. You say to the other fellow, have a ball. See? And that keeps things moving. That's the nature of life. So in this idea, then, everybody is fundamentally the ultimate reality. Not God in a politically kingly sense, but God in the sense of being the self, the deep down basic whatever there is. And you're all that, only you're pretending you're not.